Story 1.
It was supposed to be a normal drop. Most weeknights are the same for me. I start around 9:30 p.m. when the dinner rush fades and the streets get quiet. By midnight, it's mostly other drivers, a few bored teenagers, and people who don't feel like cooking. I actually prefer it that way. Less traffic, fewer awkward door interactions. Just pick up, drop off, repeat. That night felt slower than usual. I was parked outside a taco place waiting on an order that wasn't ready, scrolling through my phone and half watching the employees mop the floor around closing time. My app had been quiet for almost 20 minutes, which usually means one decent order is about to come through. When it did, I accepted it without thinking. Short drive. Good tip. Suburban neighborhood I'd delivered to before. The kind with identical houses, trim hedges, and streetlights that hum softly if you listen long enough. I grabbed the bag, confirmed pickup, and pulled out. The drive took maybe 8 minutes. Nothing unusual. No weird traffic. No strange calls. I glanced at the delivery instructions at a red light. It said, "Hand it to me. Don't knock. Don't ring. I'll know when you're here." I remember reading that twice. It wasn't scary, just slightly off. The house with no lights, the neighborhood was exactly how I remembered it. Wide streets, clean sidewalks. Every third house with the same porch light casting that warm yellow glow on trimmed lawns. It felt quiet, but not abandoned, just asleep. The GPS guided me to the end of a cul-de-sac. The house number matched. 2-story, wide siding, small tree in the yard. Every light was off. Not dim. Not maybe they forgot the porch light. Completely dark. I slowed to a stop in front of it and checked the app again. Hand it to me. Don't knock. Don't ring. I'll know when you're here. Normally, if someone wants it handed to them, they at least turn on a porch light, or they're standing at the door already. I sat there for a second with the engine running, waiting to see if anything changed. Nothing did. I grabbed the bag and walked up the driveway. The house was so dark I could see my reflection faintly in the front window. No TV glow. No hallway light. No movement. I tapped "I've arrived" in the app. Then I sent a message. "Hey, I'm outside with your order. Delivered. Read." No response. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. I shifted my weight and glanced back at the street. It was silent. No cars passing. No dogs barking. I looked at the door again. That's when I noticed something shift behind the window to the left of it. Not someone walking up. Not a light turning on. Just movement. Low. Like something crawling past the glass. The door that opened fast. I didn't knock. I didn't have time to. The door swung open the second my hand lifted toward it. Not slowly. Not cautiously. Just immediate. Like someone had been standing there waiting for the exact moment I moved. A man stood in the doorway. Mid-30s, maybe. Thin. Pale. No smile. No irritation either. Just neutral. His eyes went straight to the bag in my hand. "You're late," he said quietly. I glanced at my phone out of instinct. I was 3 minutes early. "Sorry," I said anyway, holding the bag out. Traffic. There hadn't been any. He didn't respond to that. Just took the food without breaking eye contact for a second longer than felt normal. Not aggressive. Just studying. The inside of the house was darker than it should have been. There were no lights on behind him, only a faint glow coming from deeper inside. Maybe a TV in another room. The air felt still, heavy. What stuck with me wasn't the darkness. It was the silence. No background noise. No footsteps upstairs. No hum of conversation. No sound of someone coming to meet him for the food he had supposedly ordered. Just quiet. As he stepped back slightly, the door opened wider, and I caught a glimpse past him into the hallway. There were 2 pairs of shoes by the wall, and another delivery bag sitting on a small table near the entrance. Different restaurant. Different logo. Still sealed. I looked at it, then back at him. He followed my eyes. "That one's wrong," he said flatly. "They sent the wrong thing." I nodded slowly, even though that didn't explain why it was untouched. He stepped backward again, almost blocking my view. "Have a good night," he added, already closing the door. It shut softly. No lock click. No deadbolt. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, because the movement I'd seen earlier, it hadn't been tall enough to be him. The rating that came later, I tried not to think about it after I pulled away. You see weird stuff doing deliveries. Awkward customers. Dark houses. People who don't talk much. It's not automatically suspicious. I told myself that as I finished the shift and went home around 1:30. I didn't sleep great, but that's normal for me after late nights. The next morning, I opened the app out of habit. My rating had dropped, not by much, but enough to notice. There was a 1-star review from the last delivery of the night. Complaint: driver was aggressive and tried to enter the home. I just stared at it. I never stepped past the threshold. I barely said 5 words to the guy. There's an option to dispute ratings, so I tapped into the order history to pull up the details. It wasn't there. The entire order was gone. No payout record, no address, no timestamp, just missing. At first, I thought it was a glitch. I refreshed the app, logged out, logged back in, still nothing. The only proof it happened was the 1-star rating sitting there like it had always belonged. That bothered me more than the complaint itself. Around sunset that evening, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I drove back to the neighborhood. Same cul-de-sac, same houses, same quiet street. But the house at the end, it looked wrong. The yard was overgrown. Mail was stuffed in the box. There was a faded real estate sign near the driveway, half buried in weeds. No porch light, no car. No sign anyone had been living there recently. I parked for a minute, just looking at it. My app notification sound went off in my car. New order request. I glanced down. Different restaurant. Same street name. No house number. Just hand it to me. Don't knock.
Story 2.
I only installed it for safety. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to put a camera inside my own apartment. It felt dramatic, like something you do after watching too many crime videos at 2 in the morning. But there had been a string of break-ins in the complex across the street. Nothing violent. Just laptops, consoles, cash. All during the day when people were in class or at work. The campus police sent out one of those "be aware of your surroundings" emails that nobody reads until it feels personal. My place is small. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor. Old building with doors that don't quite close unless you push them. I've always told myself it's fine because I don't own much worth stealing, but I do own a decent PC setup and my PlayStation, and my entire life is basically inside the laptop. So I ordered a cheap indoor camera online. Nothing fancy, just something that connects to my phone and sends motion alerts. I mounted it on a shelf in the living room so it could see the front door and most of the main space. The first night I turned it on, I felt stupid, like I was pretending to be in a documentary. I even joked about it in my group chat. Catch me sleepwalking and eating cereal at 3 a.m. That's how normal it felt. Just a little extra peace of mind. I didn't think I'd actually need it. It was just there, watching the door. The notification at 3:12 a.m. The first alert came 3 nights later, 3:12 a.m. I know the exact time because it woke me up. My phone buzzed against the nightstand hard enough to rattle. I grabbed it automatically, half asleep, expecting some random group chat nonsense. Instead, it was the camera app. Motion detected. Living room. For a second, I just stared at it, trying to remember where I was. Then it hit me. I was home in bed, alone. My heart didn't start racing or anything dramatic like that. It was more confusion than fear. I slid my thumb over the notification and opened the live feed. The living room looked exactly how I left it. Couch against the wall. Coffee table slightly crooked. My backpack on the chair. The front door closed. No movement. I switched to the recorded clip. It showed about 15 seconds. The timestamp said 3 hours, 12 minutes, and 8 seconds a.m. The video started with nothing happening. Then, near the bottom corner of the frame, a faint shift in shadow by the door, almost like a change in lighting. That was it. No door opening, no figure walking through, just subtle movement. I replayed it 3 times. The shadow change could have been headlights passing outside. There's a streetlight near the building. Maybe a car drove by. I even muted the audio and turned the brightness up. Nothing. Still, the notification bothered me enough that I got out of bed and checked the front door physically. It was locked. Deadbolt in place. I stood there in the dark for a minute, listening. Silence. I went back to bed and told myself it was just bad motion sensitivity. At 3:12 the next night, my phone buzzed again. The frame that changed after the second 3:12 alert. I adjusted the motion sensitivity in the settings. I told myself that was the logical fix. Old building. Weird lighting. Maybe the camera was overreacting to tiny changes. The third night, it didn't buzz. I slept fine. The fourth night, though, I opened the app out of habit before bed just to check the live feed. Something felt off. Not dramatic, just off. The camera angle looked slightly different. The door was still centered in frame, but the right edge of the couch was cut off more than before. I frowned and walked into the living room, looking up at the shelf. The camera was in the same spot. I nudged it gently with my finger, rotating it a hair to the left. Maybe I bumped it when I grabbed my backpack earlier. Maybe it had shifted from vibration. That made sense. I went to bed. The next morning, I reviewed the overnight footage out of curiosity. At 3:12 a.m., motion detected. The clip showed the same faint shift in shadow near the door. But something else caught my attention. My coffee table. I always leave it slightly angled. It's warped on one leg, so it never sits perfectly straight. I've learned to recognize that crooked position without thinking about it. In the footage, it was straighter, not perfectly aligned, just less crooked. I stared at the screen, then looked up from my bed toward the living room. The table was crooked again. I walked out and examined it like it had personally offended me. Maybe I'd straightened it earlier without remembering. Maybe I'd bumped it moving around. There were no signs of forced entry. The door was locked, windows closed. That night, before going to sleep, I deliberately pushed the table even more off-center, noticeably angled. At 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. In a recorded clip, the table was almost straight. I zoomed in. By the end of the week, I stopped telling myself it was lighting. I exported the last 4 nights of footage and watched them back-to-back on my laptop instead of my phone. Bigger screen, slower playback. Every clip was the same length. Every alert at 3:12 a.m. The same subtle shadow near the door. The same slight adjustment to the table. Nothing obvious entering or leaving. I scrubbed through frame by frame. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The reflection in the dark TV screen. My living room TV sits across from the door, and at night, it's just a black mirror. In the footage, when the motion triggers, the shadow near the door shifts, and in the TV reflection, something else shifts too. Not the table, not the door, something taller. It wasn't clear. It wasn't detailed. Just a vertical shape where there shouldn't be one. Slightly darker than the darkness around it. I zoomed in until the image pixelated. It looked like a shoulder, or maybe the side of someone's head. But the actual doorway in the main frame showed nothing. I told myself reflections distort things. Cameras compress shadows. My brain was trying to fill in blanks. Still, I couldn't unsee it. I checked older archived clips from earlier in the week. The first night, nothing in the reflection. The second night, maybe a blur. The third and fourth nights, the shape was clearer, still subtle, still easy to dismiss, but consistent. On the 6th night, I did something I hadn't done before. I left my bedroom door open. The camera couldn't see into my room directly, but it could see the hallway leading to it. At 3:12 a.m., the alert came again. I didn't check it immediately. I waited until morning. The clip started the same way. Shadow near the door, table slightly straighter. Then, at the far edge of the frame, in the hallway, my bedroom door moved out slowly, not swinging wide, just enough to shift. In the reflection of the TV, I could see my bed and a shape on it, me, still asleep.
Story 3.
Graveyard shift at the storage facility. I took the night shift at the storage facility because it paid $2 more an hour and I didn't have to talk to anyone. The place sits just off the highway, rows of metal units lined up behind a gated entrance. During the day, it's busy enough people moving apartments, small business owners grabbing tools, college kids storing furniture between semesters. At night, though, it's dead. My shift runs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I sit in a small office near the entrance with 6 camera feeds on a monitor. One shows the gate. The rest cover different rows of units. There's a motion alarm system wired to each section. If something triggers after hours, it pings the desk and logs the unique number. Most nights, nothing happens. I scroll on my phone, watch videos, heat up whatever I brought in a microwave that hums louder than it should. Around midnight, I do a slow drive around the property in the golf cart just to make sure no one's hiding in the unit. Before lockup, the facility feels safe in a boring way. Bright floodlights, barbed wire along the top fence, security signs everywhere. The kind of place designed to make you think twice about trying anything. That first week, the alarms never went off. It was exactly the kind of quiet job I wanted. Until one number started repeating on the screen. Unit 137 keeps triggering. The first time Unit 137 triggered, it was 12:46 a.m. The alarm made a short, dull beep from the panel beside my desk. I looked up, expecting to see the gate feed flash red or maybe a motion alert near the fence. Instead, the log read, Row C, Unit 137 motion detected. I pulled up the camera covering that row. Nothing. Just a line of identical metal doors under white floodlights. Shadows from the roof overhang. No cars. No people. I zoomed in on 237. The padlock hung in place. The door wasn't bent or lifted. Sometimes temperature shifts can mess with older sensors, so I reset it from the system menu and made a note in the log. 5 minutes later, it pinged again. Unit 237. This time I grabbed the golf cart keys. The air outside felt colder than it had earlier. The facility always sounds different at night. Metal contracting, wind pushing lightly against doors, little noises that mean nothing during the day. I drove slowly down row C and stopped in front of 237. The lock was still there. No scratches. No sign someone had tampered with it. I crouched and looked along the bottom seam of the door. No gap. I stood there for a full minute, just listening. Nothing moved inside. No shifting. No footsteps. No thud of something falling. I reset the alarm again from the handheld pad and went back to the office. At 1:12 a.m., it triggered again. Same unit. Same silence on camera. By the fourth alert, I stopped assuming it was random. It wasn't the whole row. It wasn't multiple units. Just 237. And the system log showed something else that I hadn't noticed at first. The unit was listed as vacant. No renter on file. No access code assigned. According to the database, it had been empty for 3 months. The alarm went off again while I was staring at that line on the screen. The lock wasn't mine around to AM. I drove back out to row C with a flashlight instead of relying on the floodlights. Up close, things always look different. Unit 137 sat halfway down the row, identical to the others at a glance. Same dented metal surface, same sliding latch. But when I crouched and held the flashlight steady, I noticed the lock. It wasn't one of ours. We sell specific disc locks in the front office, bright blue with the facility logo stamped on them. Most renters use those because they're convenient. This lock was plain silver, older, scratched along the edges. I stood up slowly and looked down the row. Almost every occupied unit had either our blue lock or something heavy-duty and obvious. This one looked temporary. I walked back to the office and pulled up the records again. Unit 237, vacant. No renter. No recent termination. No maintenance hold. It had been marked empty after the last tenant cleared out in May. We're supposed to cut any old locks when a tenant moves out. It's part of turnover. Clean the unit. Remove anything left behind. Replace the latch if needed. So why was there a lock on it? I checked the maintenance log. No note about replacing one. No note about securing it. The idea formed slowly, not all at once. Someone could be using it unofficially. If a person had access before, maybe they kept a spare key. Maybe they slipped a new lock on after hours. Storage facilities aren't Fort Knox. If you know the layout, you can move around unnoticed. The alarm pinged again while I was staring at the screen. Unit 137. I didn't grab the golf cart this time. I walked. Halfway down row C, I heard something I hadn't before. A faint metallic shift. From inside the unit, the radio went quiet. The metallic shift came again, soft, like something settling. I stopped a few feet from the door of 237 and unclipped my walkie from my belt. We're required to keep it on during rounds, even if no one else is on site. It connects to the main office repeater and records static traffic. Row C check, I said quietly, more to break the silence than anything. Static answered, not normal static. A low, uneven distortion that pulsed in and out, like interference. I glanced down at the display. Full battery, full signal bars. I tried again. Row C check. The distortion grew louder for a second, then cut out completely. Dead silence. The floodlights hummed above me. The rest of the facility looked exactly the same as it had all night. Bright, empty, secure. Another faint movement came from inside the unit. Not a bang, not a scrape, a slow shift, like weight adjusting. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the lock. It would have been simple to cut it. We keep bolt cutters in the golf cart for abandoned locks. But my brain ran through the possibilities. If someone was inside and not supposed to be, opening that door alone at 2:30 in the morning wasn't smart. If no one was inside, and this was structural settling like management sometimes claims, then cutting the lock would just create paperwork. The radio crackled once in my hand, then nothing. I didn't cut it. I stepped back, walked slowly to the end of the row, and waited for the signal to return. It did, about 10 feet away from 237. Clear as usual. The alarm didn't trigger again that night. The next morning, I left a detailed note for management. When I came in the following evening, the regional supervisor was there waiting. He told me Unit 137 had been sealed months ago due to minor structural damage in the back wall. Shouldn't even be accessible, he said. I asked about the lock. He frowned and pulled up the internal system. According to this, there isn't one. The maintenance record showed the latch welded shut in June. He drove me down to row C. The unit door had a metal plate bolted across the seam. No visible lock, no alarm indicator, as if it had never been active. But in the overnight log from my shift, Unit 137 was still listed, motion detected, 3 times, and I never found out what shifted inside.
Story 4.
I started streaming at night. I didn't start streaming because I thought I'd get famous. It was mostly boredom. I was already staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning playing games after classes, so I figured I might as well turn the camera on. A couple friends followed me, then a few random people. Nothing big. On a good night, I'd have maybe 8 viewers. I streamed from my bedroom, desk against the wall, PC tower glowing faint blue, door behind me that leads into the hallway. It's a small apartment, so if someone walks in the front door, you'd hear it immediately. That's part of why I like streaming at night. Everything feels quieter, more focused. The chat moves slow enough that you can actually talk to people instead of just reacting to spam. It felt less like performing and more like hanging out. Most of my viewers were regulars, same usernames showing up around midnight. We'd talk about school, work, random stuff while I played. I never used my real name, never gave out my address. I kept things pretty generic, basic, streaming common sense. The only slightly weird thing, if you could even call it that, was one username that started showing up every night. They never typed, never reacted, just watched. And they were always there before anyone else. The username that didn't chat at first. I didn't think much about it. On smaller streams, you get lurkers, people who tab the stream and do something else. Some don't even realize they're still watching. But this username was consistent. Same name, same blank profile picture. Always the first viewer in the list before I even finished adjusting my mic levels. If I went live at 12:03 a.m., they were there at 12:03. If I started late at 1:17, they were there at 1:17. They never typed hey, never dropped an emote, never left. I tested it once without making it obvious. Shout out to the first person in here tonight. I said casually, pretending to scroll the viewer list. You're loyal. The rest of chat responded. Jokes, emotes. That username stayed silent. A couple regulars started noticing too. Who's that guy who never talks? Is that a bot? I laughed it off. Said it was probably someone who liked background noise while they studied or worked night shifts. Which made sense. I'd do that with other streams sometimes. Still, there was something about the timing that bothered me. I tried going live 5 minutes earlier than usual one night without tweeting or posting about it. They were still first. Another night, I started almost an hour late. Still first. It wasn't that they were watching. It was that they seemed to know exactly when I would start. And I hadn't realized until then that I never actually announced my schedule anywhere specific. It just happened. Around the same time every night. But not exactly. The username never missed it. And they never left before I ended. He knew my schedule the first time the username interacted. It wasn't in chat. It was a donation. $5. No alert sound at first because I had them muted while adjusting audio. I only noticed it when the text-to-speech replayed after I toggled it back on. The message was short. Long day today. Glad you're sticking to your usual time. I paused mid-game. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't even weird on the surface. People say stuff like that all the time, but I hadn't mentioned my day yet, and I hadn't said anything about keeping a schedule. I brushed it off and thanked them out loud. Tried to keep it normal. Chat reacted like it was any other donation. The username didn't type after that. The next night, another $5. Almost didn't make it tonight. I laughed when I read it, because I actually had almost canceled. My internet had dropped earlier in the evening, and I debated skipping. I hadn't tweeted about it. I don't really use social media like that. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Maybe they just meant that almost didn't make it to the stream. That's the obvious interpretation. Still, I felt something tighten in my chest. A few days later, a third donation came through. Door behind you creaks around 1:40. That one hit differently because my bedroom door does creak, and around 1:40 most nights. The AC kicks on. It shifts the pressure in the apartment slightly. I'd never mention it. I didn't react much on stream. Just read it and moved on. But after I ended that night, I stood up slowly and looked at the door behind me. It was closed, locked. The viewer count said 1. That username, still there. He knew my schedule the first time that username actually interacted. It wasn't in chat. It was a donation. $5. No big animation, just the small banner sliding across the top of the screen. The text-to-speech read it out in that flat robotic voice I use for small tips. Cutting it close tonight. I froze for half a second because I had been cutting it close. My stream usually starts around 12:15. That night it was 12:27 because I'd stayed downstairs talking to my neighbor longer than usual. I hadn't posted about it. I don't really announce exact start times anywhere. I laughed it off. Yeah, almost didn't make it, I said casually. Chat moved on. The next night, another $5. Mix sounded weird earlier. It had. I knocked it off the desk before going live and spent a few minutes adjusting the levels before I hit the button. I didn't mention it on stream. I fixed it before anyone joined. Except, they were already there. I thanked them again. Played it normal. Third donation came 3 days later. Your hallway light flickered at 1:38. That one didn't read like a joke. My hallway light does flicker sometimes. Old wiring. And it usually happens when the AC kicks on around the same time each night. I hadn't talked about it. I hadn't noticed it on stream. But if someone was watching the camera feed carefully enough, they could have seen the glow shift under the door behind me. I didn't react much outwardly. Just said, huh, didn't catch that. Inside, though, something shifted. It wasn't that they knew my schedule. It was that they knew the parts of my night I didn't broadcast. After I ended that stream, I stood in my doorway for a long minute, staring down the hallway light. It flickered once, and for the first time, I wondered who else had noticed. The photo in my email, the email came in the middle of a stream. I only saw it because my second monitor lights up when new notifications slide in. Normally I ignore them, but I caught a glimpse of the subject line. No message. It was sent from a random string of letters and numbers. No name. I kept playing for another few minutes, trying not to think about it. Chat was slow that night. 5 viewers, the usual usernames, and one familiar silent one. During a loaded screen, I clicked over. The email had no text, just one attachment, a photo. I opened it. It took me a second to recognize what I was looking at because it was zoomed in slightly. Brick exterior, metal railing, a patch of concrete. Then it clicked. It was my apartment building, taken from across the street. The angle was slightly elevated, like whoever took it was standing near the bus stop bench. You could see the second floor windows clearly. My window, the blinds were open. My desk light was on. If you zoomed in enough, you could see the faint glow of my monitor through the glass. The timestamp in the image data said it had been taken 23 minutes earlier. While I was live, I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at it, zooming in and out like that would reveal something useful. No person visible in the reflection. No car in frame. Just the building. No threats. No caption. Just proof of location. My heart wasn't racing the way you expect. It felt heavier than that, slower, like something settling in my stomach. I glanced at my webcam preview. The door behind me was still closed. The viewer list showed 6 names, and one I recognized instantly. I muted my mic for a second and stood up, walking quietly to the bedroom window. I didn't turn off the stream yet. I just angled myself out of frame. I pulled the blinds down slowly and peeked through the gap. The street looked normal. A parked car, the bus stop bench, a streetlight flickering slightly. No one standing there. No one obvious. I went back to my chair, unmuted, and tried to sound casual. Hey, I'm gonna end a little early tonight. Not feeling great. A couple people typed good nights. Nothing unusual. The silent username didn't say anything, but they didn't leave either. I ended the stream and locked every door and window in the apartment. Double-checked them even though I always do. I called the non-emergency police line. The officer who came out was polite, looked at the email, took a report, asked if I had any specific suspects. I told him about the username. He asked if I had a real name, an IP address, anything concrete. I didn't. It's probably just a troll. He said gently, don't engage. Tighten your privacy settings. That was it. No follow-up. No investigation I ever heard about. I didn't stream the next night, or the night after that. On the third night, I opened the platform just to look. My channel still showed my last broadcast archived. Viewer list empty, except for one account. Currently watching the offline page, the same username. Waiting.